What's up, good people? It's your boy, Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr., and we're here once again for the National Black Unity News, the National Black Unity News, and JNF Enterprises Author Showcase conversations with authors, where we bring you some of not just the countries, some of the world's greatest writers, greatest speakers. And today we got a special treat. Now I'm gonna love talking to her because she's a poet as well as an author, and I love that because hopefully y'all know that I'm a poet as well too. But we love that bringing you these authors, and we are celebrating our third year anniversary of being in partnership with the National Black Unity News, and we are just loving it. We are enjoying it. We are appreciative of all of the different authors that have been a part of the showcase for the past 2 years, and then going into this third year. And as I've been talking about, been telling the authors that have started our week off this week, it's just been phenomenal to be able to talk with them, to be able to have these conversations with them, to give you, our viewing and listening audience, the opportunity to be able to see more than just their books. We wanted to have these conversations so that you can know about the author, give you some background as to their projects, give you some background as to the characters that they may have in their books, or how they went about or came about writing what it is that we'll be talking about, or that we have these conversations about, because we felt that that was important. So we hope that you all will enjoy that. We're going to jump right in, and I want to introduce this young lady to everyone, for those that may not be familiar with or may not know, but who she is. And then I'm going to introduce her, then I'm going to allow her to introduce herself to everyone, and then we'll get into our conversation, talking about, as you can see in her background, the titles of her different books that she has. And I'm telling y'all, you all are going to be blown away by these stories, I believe, and then what they entail, and then even the titles, because even the titles kind of make you say, where that come from? So we're gonna get into all of that, but I want to introduce everybody to Miss Nicole P Thomas. She is an author, poet, writer, just a great young lady that I've had the opportunity to be able to talk to a little bit, have a conversation. So I want to have her start off by just introducing herself, have her tell us just a little bit about Nicole Thomas and who she is. So welcome, Miss Thomas. How are you?
Hi, Leroy. I'm doing really good. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you and all the listeners.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So tell us just a little bit about who Nicole Thomas is, and then just a little bit of your background, if you can.
Well, I'm a New York native, born and raised here, and I am an author, as you said. I'm a poet. I started writing poetry when I was really little, honestly. I'm a mother, a wife, a sister, a daughter. I'm a PK, pastor's kid in the house.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yes. And that's really me. I'm just, I'm here.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. Now, you talked about the poetry part, starting writing when you were little. Now, what got you started writing the poetry? What made you start to put that pen to paper for poetry?
Well, for me, it was a way to deal with, those big emotions that as an early teen, preteen, you don't really know how to deal with. So it was really just me expressing how I felt, putting it on paper. Sometimes I would burn those papers when I was done, but a lot of it I kept over the years. And the poetry book that I released in 2020, it's just a compilation of a few of those. So you can probably, if you read it, it's called Facets of a Poetic Soul. And I called it that because it's different pieces of who I am. It's different facets. So you have, those angsty first love ones, you have those coming to Jesus moments, and you have grief, you have birth, death. It's just different snippets of moments in my life that I put to paper.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. And that's interesting. Now I'm gonna ask you this. Now I want to ask you, it's a two-part question. How many books have you written? But then what is one word? And this might be a little difficult for you, but I'm saying, what is one word or two? You can use two since you got a couple of genres that you in that you would use to describe your writing or writing style.
I have written 7 books,
Oh wow, okay.
seven different, I should say, titles. I have the Christian trilogy, and then which is 3 books. I have the poetry book, which is 4, and then I have a children's picture book that I wrote. I have a coloring book to go with it, and then I have a Spanish translation of that
Oh
children's book.
really? Oh wow, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Now, what made you want to do the Spanish, um, aspect of it?
It was, I just felt like I wanted to get the children's book into as many hands as I possibly could. I didn't want to limit it to just English speaking, families. So I have a very good family friend, native Spanish speaker, and she was so excited when I
Really?
asked
Oh,
her
okay.
about the idea.
Uh,
So I took it and ran with it, and it's been really well received.
no, and that's great because I think that as authors, when we find something that we of course those of us that have the English, we have to expand into thinking that we can put it if we put it in multiple
Globally.
languages,
Mhm.
then the broader the reach becomes for us as authors. So that's really great that you're doing that. Now, have you thought about doing that with your with the Christian trilogy?
I have.
Oh, okay.
It's a much longer book, so it would take a lot more time. And because translations aren't so literal, it would be a lot more difficult to get my meanings conveyed as I really wanted them to in a different
Mhm.
language. So it would take a lot more um, background work and detail work.
Now, have you what has doing doing these translations, translating your book, what has that taught you about your stories or your characters and everything like that? Have you gained anything from that?
Yeah, it really brought a lot to light because in the children's book, I say, you know, I have it here. I'll give you, example.
Cool,
So
cool.
this is the Spanish translation of the children's book, La Niña de los Flores. And like there's Mr. Fox and there's Mr. Bluebird.
Mhm.
Um, but to just say, um, Bluebird, it's different. It's one word for English, but in Spanish, it's Parajito Azul. So it's like you get so many more words to say the same thing.
Mhm.
So it you have to kind of break things down more. So I learned that when I have to
Wow.
break things down simpler if I want to translate something because
Mhm.
it's going to take up more space on the page and that's going to make the book longer and if I don't want it longer it's going to be a problem.
Oh wow, wow. Now, what would your advice be to someone who is thinking about translating their book from English to Spanish or English to another language? What kind of would you tell them about about going about doing that?
I would say do it. Like there's really nothing stopping anybody from, doing it as long as you have somebody who can translate it well
Right,
and you're able
right.
to communicate back and forth with that person so they're more concerned about not losing your meaning in the story than
Right.
just translating it because at the end of the day you're the author, your message, you still want your message to get across.
Right.
So you need to be working with somebody who understands that and they're not just trying to do words. They want your story to remain your story in the way that you want it conveyed.
Wow, yeah, that's important. I think that's really, really important. That's cool. That's cool. Now, what made you want to write the book that we're going to be talking about? What made you want to write Tales of, and I don't want to butcher this last part name, El now, is that how you pronounce it?
El Hanai.
Okay, El Hanai. Okay, okay.
Uh-huh.
What made you want to write that?
I can't say anything made me want to write it because I really
Okay.
didn't go into 2020 saying, oh, I'm going to write a book this year. It
Uh-huh.
was the furthest thing from my mind. Like I said, growing up, I was writing poetry, and you always have family and friends say, oh, you should write a book. You should write a book.
Mm,
And so it was always something I said, yeah, I'll do it one day, one day, one day.
mm,
And it just turned out, God said, okay, this is one day. And
mm.
2020 ended up being that year. At the end of 2019, I was in a place in my life where I kind of felt stagnant.
Okay.
So I had, plateaued at my job. There's no more upward mobility possible there. My marriage wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be. Frustrated with the kids. It was just like, everything kind of just came to a head at the end of 2019.
Okay.
And so in January of 2020, my father, my pastor, preached a message on being ready to move when God tells you to move.
Mm,
And prior to this, I had already, started, I was looking for a different job. I was about to just take some steps to see what I could do to move myself forward and get into a better headspace or a better place in life in general. So that Sunday, I went to the altar. I was like, all right, God, you see exactly where I'm at. You know my inner thoughts, you know where I want to be. So you're going to have to tell me where to go at this point, because I don't want to make a move and it end up being wrong, you
right.
know?
Right.
So about a week later, he woke me up 3 o'clock in the morning with this story. And it was the opening scene.
Let me tell you something, Nicole, and I lie to you not. Every single one of the individuals that those of us that have this the spirituality and God in us talk about those
Those
3
wake up calls.
a.m. I call them wake up calls, because I was talking earlier this week. I was talking with Mr. Bob Wallace. He talked about the same thing. He gets up every morning and his day starts at 3 a.m.
Mm,
3 to 6. And I said, it's something about that 3 to 5 a.m. time frame. I
yeah.
can't tell you how many of us have said the exact same thing. It's like the Lord is like, look, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I've said, really, Lord, this time of morning,
Now,
this could
but I
be
think
like,
that's why, because
okay,
everything is still still. Everybody, for the
exactly,
most part, is sleeping. It's
exactly.
quiet. Your spirit is kind of fresh because you're
Yep.
just waking up. So it's like you have a clear hearing to what he's going to say to you.
Yeah, it's you and him. It's nothing else, because it's quiet. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the TV shouldn't be on, or most of the time isn't on. You don't have the radio on or any kind of distraction. It's him and you being able to have a conversation. And not only are you able to listen, but he's also able to, I say, download to
Yes.
us.
Yes.
those
Because I'm
those
telling you, that's
thoughts.
exactly
Yep.
what it felt like. It,
Yeah.
it just felt like, you know, like fire, literally.
Yep.
Like I woke up and I was just like, okay, all right. And I took my phone and I just started typing into
Yeah.
my, Google Docs.
Okay.
And I was getting ready for work that morning and I typed nonstop.
Wow.
While I was getting to work, then I'm walking to the car and I'm like, okay, well, where is all of this happening at? Like, what world is this?
Mhm.
And I heard El Hanai. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
So I went to Google. It's not a real word together, but when you break it up, El is the Judeo-Christian word for God,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
Hanai is a Polynesian word for adopted family. And so when I put it together, it's God's adopted family. And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. And when you read the story, it really makes sense for the characters because it follows one character as he's transplanted it from one family into another.
Okay.
Another character transplanted from, darkness into light. So throughout the story, it's just, a shift from one place to another, one family to another. So it really tied in so well.
Yeah, and I love that, because I want you to give us a little bit of the story, because like you said, now is this the first book in the trilogy, or is this like the second book or third book in the
It's
trilogy?
the
Where is
first
this
book.
one? Okay, so this is the
Tales
first one. Okay,
Tales of El Hanai is the first book. The
okay,
series itself is called Tales of El Hanai.
Uh-huh.
And then each book after that has a different subtitle. So it's
Okay.
Tales of El-Hanai, the Prophecy is the second one.
Hmm.
And then Tales of El-Hanai, Wages of War is the third and final.
Wow. Wow. Now, give us a little, if you can, tell us a little bit about what each book is about, and that transition from, from one book to the next, if you can.
Okay. So the first one, it opens up, the opening scene that I was given when I woke up that morning is of the Queen, Alana, running through the forest. It's, it's misty, it's stormy, and she's running for her life because she's being pursued by her sister-in-law who's trying to kill her and usurp the throne.
Oh, wow.
And,
Oh,
and
okay.
she's heavily pregnant. So it grabs you from page one.
Okay.
And it follows her, and then it follows the child that she gives birth to. And as he has to face, his coming of age, there's magic. So they're all gifted with certain talents and abilities. As he comes of age and he's given his talent and how he has to figure out to use it. And then when he finds out who he really is, whether or not the story ends with him deciding whether or not he's going to try and reclaim what was his, or if he's going to remain in hiding. And throughout it, he's pursued still. Once his aunt finds out he's still alive, he's pursued and hunted down by, her general, and it follows them throughout that first story. And the theme throughout this is be courageous. So Joshua 1:9 is a theme that you're going to find throughout the whole series.
Now, let me
and
ask
then
you. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to go to book 2.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, book 2 is a continuation, to the first one. So it picks up where that left off, where he's made his decision and different people have come alongside him to help him, further his journey into discovering who he is and claiming what was his. And he encounters a lot against them. There's a lot of intrigue and different countries vying for power and the darkness that is trying to gain a foothold in this land. That's really the driving force behind what everybody else is doing, is this dark entity that's trying to take over. And he and his sister are battling for the light. And book 3 is the culmination. So it is Wages of War. It's the battle. It's, who lives, who dies. We hope you chose the right side. And if you didn't, these are the consequences.
Wow, that sounds exciting, and it reminds me of one of my friends. He's written a Christian suspense thriller, and his book is about these two brothers who are adopted at birth. They don't know about each other until their father is killed. One of the brothers is raised in Asia. The other one is raised here in Baltimore. But the story is about them finding out about, of course, the death of their father, but that their father was killed. Not just that he died; he was killed. The brother that was raised in Asia is an agent, is like a FBI agent, so to speak, or whatever. But he's a ninja. He's a so the story is just absolutely phenomenal, and I bring him up because, like you, and I want you to talk a little bit about this writing in this particular kind of genre. Did you find it difficult writing as a Christian writer? But then there aren't a lot of us in this particular kind of genre, or have you found that to be the case? How was that? How was that experience been for you?
Writing as a Christian in this genre was not hard because it's who I am. So it's genuine and it comes straight from my heart and my spirit. So that wasn't hard. What was hard for me writing this was deciding, how far can I go? Like, at what point do I think readers are going to be like, whoa, that's a little dark for a Christian book. And so there are some parts, mainly in the second and third book, that it took a lot of prayer, because I'm like, God, is this really what you want me to write? Because it does deal with some, murder, and it does deal with some topics. And I found that after I finished, I'm very pleased with it. I know it was what I was supposed to write. I did get some backlash from other Christians
Mhm.
who, said I shouldn't have wrote what I wrote, and it's witchcraft, and it's just I should be ashamed and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, the Bible talks about witchcraft, and if you read my stories, you would know which side wins. So I was like, so you can't really say that, because I'm not glorifying the sin, but
Right.
it exists. So I'm not denying it. So yeah, and I do agree there's not many of us writing in this genre. And even when I post online that I write it, people are like, what is that? What is Christian fantasy? What is clean fantasy? And I'm like, well, it's magic, it's adventure and action and all of that, but there's no cursing, there's no adult scenarios.
Right. Right.
And throughout the whole thing, there is a baseline of faith. So if you have eyes to see it, you're going to see the scriptures that have been placed in. You're going to see the baptism scene that's been placed in. You're going to see those come to Jesus moments. And if you don't, it's just going to read like a great adventure.
Wow. And I love that. And I love that. And they ought to be honest with you. I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis on these kinds of reading, like you said, the fantasy, suspense, thriller. Um, because to be honest with you, these are the books that make great stories. They make not only make great stories, but they make great movies. They can be made into, because I can see this being made into a movie.
Oh yes, I would love that.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just it has that feel to it. It has, because I know nothing about film writing or whatever, but I know that there's a formula.
Yeah.
I know that there's a formula when you watch a movie. As writers, I know as a writer, I watch stuff as a writer and be like, man,
I do too.
this just like this and I don't know if you watched it all either, but the Women of the Movement, the story of Emmett Till with
I haven't watched it yet.
you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. It's compelling, but I was looking at it last night. I'm like, this is some great writing. What and I happened to watch this interview today with it was Jay-Z, Will Smith, and her name, they used the initials MJ. She was, I guess, the writer of the script, the screenplay. I'm assuming, because she was talking about when they came together and they were doing the writing and stuff like that. So she was, I think, the major, if not the main screenwriter of this of the movie. But the writing of that story, because we know the story of Emmett Till, but the way that they've written it, and then even the actors and actresses that they have playing these parts, they brought these words to life. And I'm like, man, this is really good. I'm like, this is because it takes you in. You can feel the tension with what the story is about, all of that. I mean, I'm just like, man, this is good stuff. So when I watch a story, I'm watching it for that. I mean, even what Regina Bell did, Regina Bell, I just not saying Regina Bell, Regina King did with One Night in Miami. Here you had these four just well-known men, and the story that they put together to put that story together. But the dialogue, to me, it was the dialogue between Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Sam Cooke, Malcolm X, and just all of that. I mean, when I see great writing, and I'm like, just man, this is really, this really takes you in. It really brings you in. And even one of the other students, one of my other clients, he had written this. It's like Harry Potter. The book was similar to Harry Potter, and I'm not a Harry Potter fan by any means and all of that stuff. But when he asked me to work with him on his manuscript and edit it and get it into the book form, and I read it, I'm like, oh my God, this is really good. This is a really good story. So when I see stories like yours, and I'm like, man, these are the kinds of stories I believe can be taken and made into, put into film, made into film. They have that kind of context to them. And they have that richness to them where it takes you on this roller coaster ride and you got the ups and downs, like you said, the battle, you got the intrigue, you got the backstabbing. You said the sisters, the one sister, of course, wants to take over from the other
Yeah.
sister. So you got the betrayal, all of that stuff that makes it a good story that will keep people. So I think that's great. Now, can you tell me what is it that you want the readers to come away with after they've read each of the stories? What is it that you want them to come away with?
I really want them to know that you dictate the end of your story, that no matter where you start in life, the people that you meet and the decisions that you make along that journey is up to you. And that will determine where you end up at the end of your life or at the end of your story. So choose wisely, because a lot of the characters in these books are often placed at a fork in the road where they have a decision to make. Some go one way, some go the other way. And I wanted to make, the reader sympathetic to some of the characters. They're like, man, they could have just one decision. They could have just, and that's what I want them to get, that you can decide. It's up to you.
Wow. Now I'm gonna ask you this. What does the title Tales of El-Hana mean to you?
Oh, it's a source of pride for me. I look, and you can see I have the pictures behind me, and I look at them every single day, and it's just, I'm grateful to God for giving me these stories, because I'm just like, 3 years ago, I had no idea, but he knew. And I'm like, I'm humbled, I'm grateful. There's a little bit of imposter syndrome in there, like, maybe I shouldn't really be doing this. I'm not good enough. But then, I did it. And I'm just so proud of myself to say, if, even if I never write anything else, I am immensely proud of what I've done so far.
Now, how long did it take you to write the trilogy? For now, because you said 3 years. So yeah, how long did it take you to write each of those?
Yeah, the first book I wrote in 30 days.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so when I tell you I was writing nonstop, I was writing nonstop.
Okay.
So I started, the beginning of January. By the end of January, it was done. I edited it. I ended up pulling it off, after some negative reviews and people saying, oh, it was a good story, but it could have been so much better if this and this and this. So I ended up pulling it a couple months later, hiring an editor and making it, just more polished and more professional, more industry standard, I should say. I changed the covers and, did all of that. The second and third book, they were both released last year. And those, between the two of them, it took me about 6 months to write the two of those.
Wow.
They're short books. They're short. Each one, they're not even, they're not quite 300 pages, each one of them, closer to 200 each book. So they're easy reads. And, for some people that's like, oh, it goes too fast. And I'm like, well, then you just want more, right? And then for some people, they like that, because nowadays it's hard to sit and read a 300-400 page book, with so much going on. So it's, it's a quick read. You can read it on, on the bus, on the train, on a plane ride. But yeah, those are my.
Now, did you have, or do you have a particular process that you go through for writing, or have you developed a particular kind of process that you go through for writing?
Not in like standard terms where I sit down and I allotted this amount of time. No, it was more just with the first book, like I said, I banged that out and it was done. The second and third books, it took a little bit more, and it was more so, okay, God, where do you want me to take these characters at this point? And if I didn't hear anything, I didn't write. So I could go for weeks and not write anything. And then suddenly, I sit and write for an hour. And if I tried to write without his consultation, I ended up deleting everything I had wrote because it just didn't fit. And I knew it didn't fit.
Right.
Because I had people asking, oh, is there a love interest? Is this person going to get with this person? So I tried it out and I was like, okay, no, I'm sorry, my bad. That's not going to work. And so, that's my process. I just go to him for everything because I know he gave me this gift and this talent. So it has to come through him first before I can put it on paper.
Now, how did you come up with the covers? Because those hold the book up again. I know people. How did you come up with those designs for for the covers? What made you think along those terms and everything like that for that?
Well, I always wanted a crown because that's the
Really?
end goal.
Okay.
Everybody's going after the crown for this. So the first cover that I did was actually very minimalistic. It was very dark. It was all black. The crown was in white and it had two hands reaching up like this for the crown. And it got a lot of good feedback, but people were kind of like, it's too simple for the story. Like the story is so much more. It needs to pop more. It's not really industry standard. So this cover, the first cover is actually a pre-made cover. And a lot of people are like, oh, the custom, because at that point, it's expensive when you want to do custom covers. So the first book, it's a pre-made cover and it just fits so well and it pops and I love it. It's beautiful. The second book also pre-made cover because it's a prophecy. So I wanted the book and I didn't want people on the cover because in the story, I don't really go into a lot of detail of what the characters look like because I really left that up to the reader to see in their own mind.
Okay.
There's a few who, I was intentional about, but not so much. This is the only custom cover that I did because I couldn't find what I wanted on the site that I was using. So I was like, okay. So I was like, I'm going to have to bite the bullet, invest in myself for this. And so I found an illustrator on Instagram, actually, Hannah Stern Jacob, and she did a phenomenal job. Like I told her my vision, we went back and forth a couple of times and she came up with this and I was like, yep, that's it. So I've actually worked with her on one other project that's going to be coming out this year. That's a special edition for this trilogy. So that cover that she designed for that is absolutely stunning and I cannot wait. I'm so excited to release that one too. But so yeah, those are my covers.
Yeah, and for the authors that are watching and maybe watching the replay, please understand the importance of a strong cover.
Yes,
and how
it makes a huge difference.
That is huge. It can be the difference between someone picking your book up and putting it right back down.
Exactly.
Or picking that book up and wanting to read that book. It has a book cover can capture someone. Just the book cover itself can make somebody want to read a book. Oh, I've got to see what this is about because the cover is so, is so captivating.
Exactly.
So it's very important that you understand how to use the importance of your cover in being able to draw your audience in and being able to do what it is that you want it to do. So I understand that. Now, can you give us what you believe are your 3 keys to delivering an extraordinary good read, and then developing a series, a good series?
I would say now they're key, but they're not necessarily strong points for me. But world building is important. Emotion is very important. And what would I say the third one? Honesty. Because I feel like when you read a book, if you know who the author is, their personality and whether they're genuinely invested in what they wrote will come through. You can tell when somebody just slapped some words on pages and we're just like, let me put this out. Like you can tell the difference. So I think those are 3 key things. World building was hard for me because I'm action driven. So even when the stories, you'll see, things happen pretty quickly. It keeps moving. And so I had to go back a lot and do editing to build up the setting and the scene so you could really see what was happening. And then emotion, because you want to draw your reader in. I've read some books that have made me cry, like sitting here and I am crying because the author did such a good job of conveying those emotions. So if you have a book or a story that's like that, draw from your own emotions. How did you feel when such and such happened? And try and put that into words so that it translates to your reader.
Now, is that what you did? Is there any part of Nicole that is in the trilogy or even in your children's book? Is there any part that you drew from an aspect of your life that you kind of use to write the book?
There is one of the characters that I really
You got
fell
a
in
big
love
smile
with.
on your face with that one.
One of the characters that I fell in love with in this story was Acronius. And he is somewhat, I guess you could call him a prodigal, or he's that Saul Paul character. So there's a baptism scene in the book. And so for that, I wanted that heavy feeling of the Spirit falling on you.
Mm.
And I've had it happen a couple of times. One time I was on a train going to school years ago, but it's vivid. And I can remember I was listening to music, and I can remember sitting and just feeling like I had to shrink. Like it was just so heavy. I'm just like, okay. So I wanted to convey that heaviness that he felt in that moment where, he's transformed. The children's book, it's more my daughter in that book, because it started off as a bedtime story for her, a lesson on disobedience. So my daughter's very headstrong, and she has a good reason for the things she does, but it's not necessarily what mommy told you to do. It's disobedience. So that's what I pull from that story. It's the parents, disappointment that their child didn't listen, and it's the child learning this lesson.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Now, what advice would you give to an aspiring author or writer about telling a good story or delivering a good book? What would your advice be to them? Hey, Nicole, I got an idea for a book, and I just don't know how to get started. I don't know what to do with this, what I got in my head. What advice would you give to them?
Just verbal vomit, like literally get a notebook, write it down. Like that's the first step. Just write it down. It's not going to be pretty. It may not make sense to anybody else but you. But once you get it down on paper, then you can go back and organize your thoughts and make things look pretty and work with an editor or, whoever that is working with you on it, and make it into that story that you envisioned in your head. But you have to start, because the more you sit there and say, I don't know where to start, you're never going to start. Just write it down, get it out.
All right. You said you've written 7 books, right? What's the difference between Nicole in book 1 and Nicole in book 7? What has Nicole learned in between those books?
Nicole has learned a lot in between those books. Like I said, with book 1, I threw it out there and I said, here world, here I am. And the world said, not quite. So I have learned to be more patient, definitely more patient with what I put out. If I'm not 100% satisfied with it, I'm not putting out. The children's book, I sat on for several years.
Did you?
I had it written, a long time ago, because it was a story, just for her. But in 2020, the same time I started this, I had started to say, okay, let me do the kids' book too. So I was looking for an illustrator for that.
Okay.
And so I had hired one, and we went forward with everything. She was done. I loved the work, but something just wasn't right. So I was like, all right, let me put a pause on that and just focus on a trilogy. Fast forward to last year, 2021. And I said, let me revisit this, see if I can really finish it. And turned out almost all the images she had used were clip art. So I couldn't even publish that. If I had published it before, I probably wouldn't got in trouble with, and lost who knows what. So I thank God for putting that pause on me for not, being completely satisfied. And then I found another illustrator. She's the one who told me about the work being clip art. And I worked with her, and we went back and forth. And I released this in September of last year. So this took the better part of the entire year last year that I was working on it. Yeah. And so that's the patience, because what you put out is out forever. and that's your name, that's your face, it's your brand. So I have learned patience, first of all. And I'm not perfect. Nothing I put out is going to be 100% perfect, but I've learned to put excellence in what I do. So if I'm 100% satisfied at the end of the day, even if somebody else doesn't like it, that's okay. Because what I have is not for everybody. But I'm happy with it. I know God is happy with it. I'm good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's next for you? What do you have? What are you working on? What do you have coming down the pipe in 2022? For what's in store? What can we look for in 2022 from Nicole?
There's 2 or 3 books coming out this year.
Really?
The
Okay.
special edition for this one, for the trilogy, the special edition. So it's going to be all 3 of the stories in one hardcover book.
Really?
And it'll
Oh, wow.
it'll have 2 bonus short stories in it, which is kind of like a backstory for 2 of the characters.
Nice.
So that'll be in that. That's coming out in the next couple of months. And then I'm working on a children's devotional.
Really? Okay.
So that'll be somewhere in the middle of the year. And then the third, that's maybe, I don't know yet, but I've been working on it. It's a standalone fiction book, and it follows a single mom and her daughter and how she's trying to make a better life for herself. And it started off as like a writing prompt. You're on Instagram, people throw out writing prompts, to just get the juices flowing, see what comes up. And it started off as that. And it just kind of was like, oh, okay, this is really good. So I ran with it. I got the first couple of chapters done and I got stuck. So it's kind of just been sitting there for a while. But I wanted to write the story about her because I felt like she's an unrepresented person in the literary world. She's not a single mom because, she was promiscuous as a teenager. She's not a single mom because she got caught up in drugs. She's not, from the hood. She's a regular Black woman. She's normal. But through life circumstances, she's now alone. She's hurting and she's just trying to do the best that she can. And so that's what I'm doing for that book. So those are the 3 coming down the pike.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's good. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I like that. I'm always fascinated when it comes to writers, especially the fiction writers, because y'all, I can't do it. I can't. I don't know how y'all do it.
And people say they're like, where do you come up with this stuff?
Yeah, y'all get these, because I've had authors, and you tell me if this happened with you. And the characters take on a persona of their own as you're writing. I mean, they become like actual people that you sit there talking to and they're telling you the story and everything.
100%. 100%. Because you're sitting there and you're like, well, what is Acronius gonna do? How would he react in this situation? It becomes like a real person. And then, when you have the evil characters, you're like, well, she's bad. So how would she do this? And I had so much fun writing the bad characters. As weird as that is, I had so much fun writing them because the level that they will go to is just like, wow, you are really, really bad. But at the end, it's just like, well, God can still redeem, this person if they want to. But it's, they come alive completely.
That is so cool. Now tell people how can they connect with you? How can they purchase the books? Any of your books? How can they purchase them? And then how can people connect with you? Because you have the children's book too. So
yes.
If people want those children's books to go be in their schools, or if they want you to come out and kind of talk about those, or even talk about the trilogy as well, how can they contact you?
I do have a website. And I send out signed copies and little gifts with every order. It's my name, NicolePatriceThomas.com. So you can go there and put in any order that you want. I do school orders. The children's book and the coloring book is actually in a learning center in Oklahoma right now. And it's awesome. They're in church bookstores. It's, they're out there. So it is suitable for ages 16 up, the trilogy. The kids' book is, from parents reading to their child up until early readers, so 6 or 7. They're also available on Amazon, Target, Walmart, and Barnes & Noble.
Now, can you talk about that? Because now, did you go were you I'm gonna say it like this. I don't say it like to say it self-published. Were you an authorpreneur, or did you go the traditional route and sign through a publishing company, a mainstream publishing company?
Authorpreneur. And when I started, honestly, I never even considered querying for an agent or a publishing house. It really
Mhm.
just didn't occur to me until I started interacting with other authors. And they were like, "Oh, are you querying anybody?" I was like, "What does that mean?" you know? So it was something that I learned about. Did I try it? Yes, I sent out a couple of letters here and there. I got back one response for the children's book, but I didn't like the contract that I was offered.
Yeah,
So I was just like, yeah, I'm good.
yeah.
I can do it myself.
Yeah, and I tell authors, because you have a lot of people, they want to. I said you wait, the pros and cons of both of them. Trying
Hmm.
to go the mainstream route or the entrepreneurial route, and you see which one fits you.
Yeah.
If the mainstream fits you, and you want to be with someone that you feel comfortable with, and that that does it a certain way, and you don't have control. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I'll be
Exactly.
real about that. And tell people that, you look at that, but, you know, the the other side of that, being an entrepreneur, it's all you. It's
Yes.
all you.
Yeah.
You have to you wear different hats. You have to put all of the pieces together, like you with the designing of the cover, with the design of the covers, having a graphic artist that you have to hire, that you got to vet,
Hmm.
all of those things,
Yeah.
and even with the children's book, when you talk about the illustrator,
Hmm.
you got to understand that, and yeah, that's kind of crazy with the illustrator
And
using
you have to
book
be,
art.
yeah,
So,
you have to be teachable too, because I taught myself how to use,
absolutely.
the Adobe Illustrator suite. So I can use Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop.
Okay.
So a lot, you have to learn
Oh, that's
how to do
cool.
all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if you
Mhm.
were with an agency, they have their people who do that. So
Right.
you have to be able to put on all these different hats to do this. So that's something else that I'm very proud of myself. Like I can go in and edit my illustrations now like nothing. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome to have that stuff on your resume as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I taught myself how to do this, but you
Yeah.
have to have the
And
time.
even right. And now even with being a entrepreneur, you still hire someone to do it, but you now have the eye for it. So you know what it is that what they're
Yes,
doing. You know
exactly.
what they're doing or what
Exactly.
you want and how it actually should turn out and everything like that.
Yes.
So for those aspiring authors, please understand that there's a pro and con to each of them, but
Hmm.
at the same time, even as an entrepreneur, you should still learn what it is that you're hiring out other people to
Yeah.
do. But it's an
Yes.
editor, you should still be editing the book yourself.
Yes.
A
Yes.
graphic designer, you should still, you get the final say.
Hmm.
A good graphic designer, I can't tell you how important that is for you to build. And this is what I love about the graphic designer, the two that I use. I can do exactly what you said. I tell them what the vision of the book is, what the book is about, give them an idea, and they give me, for whether it's for me or for my authors, they'll give them three looks, and I say, hey, this is,
Hmm.
and it's usually right on point. All three of them are usually on point, and it's just a matter of picking which one you like the best out of them.
Which
That
one?
is, yeah,
Yeah.
that's so important to be able to have that. So, so that's really cool. So if you can, Nicole, if you can give us your contact information one more time, and then we'll close out, okay?
Sure. So, everybody, I am Nicole Patrice Thomas. You can follow me on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as Nicole Patrice T. My website is also NicolePatriceThomas.com. And I have an author page on Facebook. I have an author page on Amazon where my books can all be found.
Yeah, do me a favor, spell it out for them so that people know the spelling.
So it's Nicole, Nicole, Patrice, Patrice, Thomas, Thomas.com.
Yeah, because some folks will jack that all up. Sorry, I can't
Yes,
find
there's
it.
no H in Nicole. Okay, guys, there is no H in Nicole.
So folks will do that. Or that's one of my pet peeves is when I can't find somebody when
Mm,
we talk about, I'm like, because people have a crazy way of spelling their name or their, I should say their handle or
their
level or
handles,
whatever
yeah.
is not the same
Hmm.
on social media. I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, can you just like really
Yeah, and
make it
I did
easy
that
for people?
intentionally because I wanted to make it easy. So it's
Yeah,
Nicole Patrice
yeah,
T everywhere. That's
yeah.
that's where it's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. That is important. So, Nicole, thank you, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a part of the Author Showcase. It's been I knew it was going to be a great conversation anyway, but talking about what it is that you've created, all of those things, the books that you've created, both the Christian, what do you call it? You call it Christian fantasy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
Christian.
overall genre is Christian fiction, but within that
Okay.
you have a lot of subcategories. So it's Christian fiction, but it's Christian fantasy.
Got you. And the children's book, doing some phenomenal things. And I want to connect you too with she's the host of the National Black Unity News, our Tuesday night events and everything like that. But she's an educator, and she loves children's books. She loves because she has schools that she goes to and she reads to kids
Hmm.
and a whole lot of things. So I want to connect you with her for the children's book as well. So thank y'all for tuning in. It's been another episode of the National Black Unity News. You can go to our website, www.tnbun.com. Get your subscription. You can subscribe. It's a quarterly newspaper that you can be a part, that you can actually read. And it's not just about the author showcase. There's so many articles, topics that are covered in this newspaper. I promise you, you're not going to find the stories that are in here anywhere else. Nowhere else. The author showcase, you're not going to find that in any other, newspaper. And that's what we enjoy being different than everyone else, giving this platform to authors that look like us, that are from our community, in our community, about our community, their voice to be able to bring their mission, their message, their movements, and their motivation, all of those things to be able to bring them not just to the newspaper, but to the stage like this, where we can talk with them, have a conversation with them so that you can learn more about when you go out there to buy those books. I'm gonna say that again. So when you go out there to buy those books, you know more about the author. It's not just about, oh, I'm just gonna buy the book. You know a little bit about the story, you know, even how they created the story, what brought them to write that particular story and everything like that. And it gives you more of a connection with the author. So we thank y'all for tuning in. It's your boy, Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr., the Impact Builder. It's 2022, y'all, and it's building season. It's building season. What are you building in 2022? Hopefully, you're building your literary library by getting these books. Because here's the challenge that I put to everyone, Nicole, and I think I mentioned it earlier. Here's the challenge: read 20 pages a day. They say if you read 20 pages a day, you will have read 30 books by the end of the year. That's 20 pages a day. You will have read 30 books by the end of the year. How much more, how much more intelligence will you have? How much more knowledge will you have? How much more information will you have? Read 30 books by the end of the year. My assignment is to make you better by the end of the year than you were at the beginning of the year. So I put that challenge to you. So it's been the Author Showcase. Nicole, thank you again for being with us. And we will see you all next time. We appreciate y'all. We'll talk to y'all soon.